Hi, this is Ed Rising, and welcome to another episode of Ed's Pop-O-Matic podcast, a retro pop culture podcast where everything retro is new again if you keep it in your heart. Today we have a special guest, an author. Her name is Janice Mitchell, and she has written her book, My Ticket to Ride. Hopefully you can see it there, and you can see it on her background. It's a wonderful story, uh, exciting story about her uh, going to run away, more or less, to see the Beatles. And I welcome her to the show. Her name is Janice Mitchell. Jan, and welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ed, for having me.
So, Jan, I was really interested in reading the book. I enjoyed it very much. I found it to be a very sensitive story as well, because this love of the Beatles is incredible thing to happen to a young person. I think when you're a young person, whether you're a boy or a girl, you're gonna have hormones shooting through you and all kinds of things and things that happen to you that you need to have something to give you happiness and joy and love. And sometimes if you don't have that in your early life, then in that then you find it in the Beatles. Did you find that you were missing that in your early childhood?
Well, yes, but then when my great uncle Mac, he was the most wonderful person in my life. First time I ever knew love and happiness. He'd passed away when I was 15,
Yeah,
leaving a huge hole in my life and in my home life where I was living with my great aunt and her daughter. And the entire fabric of our home completely changed when he passed away. And I felt like there just wasn't anybody anymore for me, you know?
yeah, that's must have been extremely difficult. And then also, as my audience should know, again, we're talking 1964, and we had just lost the president of the United States in a horrible assassination. And so these are things that are very traumatic. And that is one of the reasons why the Beatles is so beloved. Because when the Beatles came to America, appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show, they infected America with a tremendous amount of optimism and fun and great music and a brand new sound and something that teenagers of that era could really attach themselves to. I don't know if that's the right phrase, but something that they might have been looking forward to. Would you say that the Beatles had that kind of reaction for you?
Yes, because when I first heard I Want to Hold Your Hand, it was December 26, 1963. And I was pretty lost. I mean, I was 15 at the time. I was depressed. I was very down. There
Yeah,
was no other kind of music that had any effect on me whatsoever. Like some people say, "Oh, what was your favorite band?" Well, I never had a favorite band until
yeah,
the Beatles came. Then when I
right.
heard that song on the radio that day, that evening, my life changed forever from that moment on. I just felt immediate, like, I don't know, like exhilaration and happiness and love. And
Yeah.
it just had a sound that, we never heard before. It was just the chords and the harmony and the words. I want to
What
hold
a
your
great
hand.
gift that is for you. It's a great gift for us. All these years later, and young people that are getting into the Beatles today. That you hear that and you hear, I want to hold your hand. I mean, what a great message that is. I
I
mean, we
know.
talk about
I
all you need is love and things like that, but I want to hold your hand is so personal.
It's very personal, and only somebody who could care about you would want to hold your hand. And I had never known that before in my entire life up to
Yeah.
that point. And that's what I wanted. I wanted that. And there they were saying, "I want to hold your hand." Oh my goodness, how incredible that was, how powerful, how wonderful. And that's what I wanted.
Yeah. And you went out and you tried to get it. I mean, it's an incredible story, and I really recommend my audience going out there and finding this book. And you can find it on Amazon, and you can find it in bookstores. And where else can we find My Ticket to Ride?
Well, Barnes and Noble in their stores and online, they could get it. Of course, Amazon, everybody knows Amazon. You can
Right.
get it online at Target. You can even get it at the Liverpool Beatles Museum. They're carrying it now too.
Wow. Doesn't the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland have it?
No, it's accepted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but they don't carry it in their gift shop.
Wow.
I
That's
know.
something that would be really ironic, because one of the great parts of your story, and we'll get there. We're not going to go too deep because we want people to go out and buy the book and really read about this incredible adventure. Because Jan and her friend wanted so much to involve themselves in the Beatles that they decided to leave their homes in Cleveland and fly to London to try to be with the Beatles and that whole culture that they were experiencing, all that British invasion stuff that was happening, and clubs and young people and
Yeah.
being a young adult, even though they were maybe a little bit too young for that, but they did. And it's an incredible story to be able to go out there. Now, you remember when you got there, did you feel very much like a strange person in a strange land, or or did you feel comfortable with it
I
at
felt
the time?
happy and exhilarated that I was there in the place where I wanted to be. The very place that where the Beatles were born and created this wonderful music. I wanted to walk on the in the same places they walked on,
Yeah.
breathe the Beatles air. I called it Beatle Land,
Yeah.
and I just felt that this was the place for me.
Well, I was just saw Denny Lane in concert the other night, and he
Yeah.
was talking about, you mentioned a club called the Club Marquee
Yes.
in London, and he talks about his days as a young musician. Around the time that he was in his band prior to the Moody Blues, called the Diplomats. And
Mm.
he talks about playing the club at Marquee, and that the Who was the house band, I think, at the time that he was playing there. And I understand that you had spent some time there and had some really good times over there. And it's just such a great adventure to go out there, and real, if you don't mind me saying the word, ballsy. I mean, it was just terrific that you had this issue in which you needed to find this happiness, and you took the initiative, you and your friend, to go out and find this. And I think that a lot of people in this world, they get depressed and they don't know what they can do with their lives, and they don't know what to do about it. And you actually took action, and I think that takes a lot of credit. And I
Well,
give
and
you a
I
lot of
also
credit for
I
that.
did it in a highly organized manner. It wasn't anything, like, oh, I'm going to do it and I'm just going to jump over there tomorrow. No, I planned it all. I did the planning, and we got our passports and we bought our TWA one-way tickets to London, and everything was just as it should be. Nothing out of line, except, well,
Were you surprised that some of the adults were that, I mean, they made the transactions, but
yeah.
there weren't any questions as to, do you have parental authority to do this or anything like that, or
No, I mean, you could get a passport. Anybody can. Age 16 and over, there was nothing that was totally legal.
I
I
guess
didn't
so.
even I didn't even know that airlines were not supposed to sell overseas tickets to unaccompanied minors. We didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah,
We
yeah.
go to the ticket office in downtown Cleveland, and there are the two, beautiful agents. They look like it should have been on the cover of Teen magazine. And they just said, "Oh, how wonderful, your parents are sending you for vacation." And we both just nodded and said, "Yes." Tickets, please.
Ah, wow, that's incredible. So,
Yeah. But
not
I
only,
have to say that was a completely different era. Like,
yeah,
you couldn't get away with that today. That would never happen today. With the era that I grew up in, it was an era of freedom. you
Yeah,
know, and you didn't feel worried about things, you know, and you kind of could do what you wanted to do. It was a wonderful time that I grew up in. I'm so happy that I grew up in those days rather than today, you
true.
know, where it's a
I mean,
totally
when I
different.
was a young kid and I was a young child at that time, you know, you go out, you play after school all day, or you'd walk
Yeah,
to school. It would be a mile and a half or whatever it was. You know, you
yeah,
could do these things, and maybe you even walk to the bus or whatever. Today's, and unfortunately, in decades since then, you know,
yeah,
there's been so many terrible things that have happened with young people and children, and so there's a lot more guidance involved, and even that doesn't make, you know, because you know there's limitations on that because both parents have to work today, and there's a
right.
lot of other issues involved with that. But
Well,
yeah, it's a different era, you know.
yeah, well, I feel very fortunate that I never worried about a thing.
Yeah,
Like, of course, I didn't know about the search that was going on for us, which turned out to be an international search. We had no idea because
right,
we
right,
weren't watching the television. We didn't have one
right.
in our little flat, and we didn't have a radio. We didn't read newspapers. I mean, today, kids would be on their phone reading every single thing, you know.
Yeah,
We were just footloose and fancy free,
wow.
completely unaware, just in, you know, going to Soho because I read in a Beatle magazine that that's where the Beatles could go and hang out. So I
Yeah,
remember I told my friend, I said, "Look, they actually put this in a magazine that that's where the Beatles go. That's where we're going. We're Soho. That's it."
that's great.
Yeah,
That's great.
yeah,
So, you know, one of the things that you're going to find out when you read this book, folks, is that because of the matter of these girls going to Cleveland, there was apparently a search for them, which is very interesting to seeing how that was handled, um, and eventually found and returned back to Cleveland.
yeah.
Apparently, the Beatles were trying to find you as well. That's
Well,
incredible, huh?
they were asked to, you know, become involved, and they did. And you know, one of them did become involved in a way at
Yeah,
closer to our leaving, but I'll leave that for the readers to find out what that is, because
sure.
that's a good one.
There's
But
so
I
many really
did,
great stories in the book, you know, and in fact, there's
well,
a great
when
story
I,
involving another of great artist of that time period, right?
yeah,
So,
you read about that, what happened there.
that's a little teaser for you. If when you read this book, you're going to find a hell of a story of Janice's interaction with a famous rock group. Um, I'd like to just ask you about coming home.
Yeah,
So coming home, it's uh, it's must have been incredible to have and it's sad to have to descend and coming home and then readjust back into your life. Um, how did you find how did you find that? Was there a sense of celebrity on your part? Was there
no, there was no sense of celebrity.
difficulty?
There was just the sense of the Catholic guilt,
Oh,
you know,
yeah, sure.
how, you know, I dragged my family's name through the mud and how I wasn't allowed to talk about it at all with all the shame that I brought upon everybody and my school and my church and my neighbors and everybody. So I basically was just told to keep my mouth shut. I wasn't allowed to speak about it at all. So there was
Wow.
no sense of celebrity at all.
Oh, wow.
Hmm.
Well, you know something, I think it's a great thing that you did, and I certainly wish that your life is better today and that you know, I think writing this is a tremendous cathartic experience. And I think it's good for you. I think it's good for people to read this kind of a story because a lot of people can relate to it, you know.
Well, I just wrote it as I was remembering and reflecting. So I didn't even plan on writing this book, honestly. I was telling somebody what happened, and they said, "Well, all you have to do is write it down." And I said, "What do you mean, write it down?" He says,
Yeah.
"Don't you understand? You have a book to write." I said, "Oh, really? Okay, well, I guess I will.
Can I ask you, Janice, what's your favorite Beatles songs? You have like
Well,
a
of course, I want to hold your
favorites?
hand.
Hmm.
But I love Live and Let Die. People are always surprised by that.
That's
You
a
know,
great song.
it's a great song. I love it. And of course, I love Michelle and I love Blackbird. And there's just so many. I mean, I just love, I mean, the Beatles have always been like the background to my life, as I always. And if you're a Beatle lover, that's always going to be the case.
Right, right,
Um,
right.
but I guess one of my favorite fun tunes by the Beatles is Rocky Raccoon.
Oh, it's a great
Oh,
one, right?
I love that one. That is so
Yeah,
fun.
it is so playful,
So playful. It's
Yeah.
adorable. An adorable song.
Oh, that's so great. Did you ever have you seen uh Paul, George, or Ringo and John in concert at all?
Well, the original concert in Cleveland on September 15th, 1964, when the Beatles first played in Cleveland, yes, and I
Of,
was right in the front row.
of course. Now that must have been one hell of an experience
Oh,
to
yeah.
yeah, and Jan details that in her book. So you're going to enjoy that when you read the book.
And then the
Um,
next morning, we flew out of Cleveland to London
so it was the next day.
the
Wow,
next day.
it's incredible.
Well,
Wow.
why wait? There's
Yeah.
nothing to wait for after that.
That's fantastic. And then in the years since, have you seen them solo?
I've seen Paul. I saw Paul in 2016 here in Cleveland for his one-on-one concert,
Yeah.
but I haven't seen any others. No.
Okay. Well, you know what? It's really great chatting with you, Jan. Um, I um, I was I really want my audience to check this one out and go to Amazon, go to your various booksellers, your uh, Barnes and Nobles and so forth, and look for this. Um, it's a good, really good story.
Like I
Um,
said,
Jan, is there anything else that you're working on now? Or do you have any future books
yeah.
in mind or
I'm working on
promotion tours or anything like that?
I well, last year I was in Liverpool for International Beatles Festival where I was a guest speaker, which was nice. And I can't tell you how much love Liverpool. The people there are just so down to earth and so friendly and so helpful and nice. And the Beatles is like everything there.
Wow.
And
Even now, right? 50 some odd years later,
oh
60.
my gosh, yes.
It's amazing.
And
I know
I
you.
was just there last year. I was there in 2018 when I was doing research for my book.
Mhm.
I went there with my brother and we had a fabulous time. And I plan to go again. I hope I can go this year, but I'm not sure yet because some other things are going on. But as far as books, I'm working on my next book, which is completely different.
Okay.
I mean, if you go on my website, you will see a lot about my career as an investigator.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was what I was going to write about first, but
Yeah.
this other book just demanded to be written before my investigation book. So that's what I'm working on now. I moved to New York City after my life in Cleveland.
Right.
I married a musician, of course, right? And we had to go to New York City. And while I was there, I was a writer, a journalist, and editor. And just one thing led to another. And I was hired by a private investigation company, first as a writer. And then I said, you know what? Instead of writing about things that happened, I want to be a part of things that are happening. So this company, they work specifically on counterfeit trademark uh, investigations, like
Yeah.
counterfeit Rolex watches and all the high-end brands. That's what we did. Went
Hmm.
out there and I learned how dangerous it is. For example, the Rolex watches, they could only be um, assembled and distributed by this very dangerous Vietnamese gang that
Uh,
operated out of Canal Street in Manhattan. And so I would go undercover, So I'm going to write about what this whole world was like. And so that's
Wow.
going to be my first book. Yeah. And also the relationships in the agency itself, like how I assumed I was going to be part of a team, but it was
Yeah.
the team was all guys who didn't want a girl, right?
Right on. So now you got to talk about getting, having a woman in that position
Yeah, and
and
the
all the
stuff they did to undermine
uh,
me, and how I
oh man.
decided
Yeah.
I had to cut myself away from the herd because all I really wanted to do was solve cases.
Wow. Wow. Well, that's really interesting that you got into that field
Oh
and
yeah,
that you did that.
I'm still in that field.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And then, as a reporter, I mean, that must have been interesting to do that. And then you were able to learn from that to develop into the investigation. So that's very, very cool.
Well, I learned that when I went out in the field as a reporter to find people and ask some questions, probing questions, but in a nice way,
Yeah,
and then come back and write up my story and be reprinted. I said, this is me. I love it because
yeah.
I like being out there on my own, and developing my own leads, my own stories, my own investigations, and that's what I love.
Well, that's so great. And that just goes way back to the beginning of this discussion. This
Yeah,
is you taking initiative and going out and finding things, learning things, uh, being able to make a difference, so that people understand the dangers of what was going on with that. And
yeah.
and so I think that's a very cool thing. And then taking that situation that you came from to go out and see the Beatles and find something that's love and joy and I wonder when you have that in your heart, you're always going to have that, and that's so great.
Always. Even
Yep.
though people tried to make me forget about it, or never talk about it, or make me feel shame or guilt, what
Really now, see, this is interesting.
I always, you can't take no one can take what's in your heart and in your mind away from you, so I always relived it myself without ever talking about it. That's why it took me so many years to write the book, because
Well,
I kind of told myself, okay, I hurt people obviously back then, although I didn't know it. And people told me, never talk about it again. I just kind of indoctrinated myself into never talking about it,
mhm.
until just recently, and I wrote the book.
Well, there's just a segment of people in everybody's life that feels that they need to put people down. They need to restrain you from doing something, restrain you from happiness. And you really got to fight against that. I know that I experienced that in my life. I'm sure everybody on some level has some experience in that regard. And I'm so glad that you were able to get past that and so forth. And I wish you the very best
Thanks, Ed.
in the future and on this new project. Um, I guess we're sort of getting towards the end here.
Sure.
And I want to again suggest you guys go out there and find this book um, by Janice Mitchell, My Ticket to Ride, How I Ran Away to London and see the Beatles and get rock and roll band in Cleveland. I mean, it's
Yeah.
an incredible thing. And now, where's the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? Cleveland, Ohio, man, and it's a great museum.
It's ironic.
Yeah, and hopefully they'll have you do speeches over there. That would be very cool if they.
That would be very cool.
So hopefully that happens for you. And
Hopefully.
I wish you the best with that. I thank you for being on the show today.
Thanks, Ed.
And just to let my audience know, thank you very much for listening. And this is Ed's Pop-O-Matic podcast, a retro pop culture podcast. And we're everything retro beats the new if you keep it in your heart. And keep what's important in your heart. If you
Yes.
find something that you get love from the Beatles or whatever it is that's like that, make sure you keep that going. Don't let it get you down, right? What's the Beatles song, right? don't let me down. Don't get me down, right? I mean, it's
Well,
you gotta be coming up, I guess.
I had an aunt who told me, don't let anyone steal your joy.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Have a great night. Thank you, Janice. I appreciate so
Thank
much you
you.
being on the
Thanks,
show.
everybody. And thank you so much, Ed. You're the best. Love you.
Love you too. Good night.